this morning we're wrapping up our Who's the Boss series with a look at gender in the workplace. Does it really matter to your career if your boss is a male or a female? And can anyone really leave their sexuality at the office front door? Here's NBC's Kevin Tibble.
A male boss.
You're a real wise guy, you know that?
A female subordinate. And a coy attempt to win favor that cost this wannabe apprentice her job.
You're fired.
To flirt or not to flirt.
How about coming up to my place tonight? We'll go crazy.
Just one of the minefields in today's workplace where, despite reams of sexual harassment law, old habits and stereotypes die hard.
She happens to be our new receptionist. She goes with our new surroundings.
In 2005, the evidence is clear that we haven't made much progress.
Men who don't like working for women.
I found in the workplace that women tend to be more emotional than men.
And men who do.
I just think that they're more in touch with their feelings.
Put a matrix together.
All perceptions that Julia Stewart, president and CEO of IHOP Restaurants, wishes were long since extinct.
I really think it's not about gender. I think it's really about someone's style.
Unfortunately, gender affects how that style is perceived.
A aggressive, ambitious, competitive woman might be perceived differently than a man with exactly the same propensities.
Back in the world of pop culture, it's attraction, not friction, as the female boss just can't help hitting on her male secretary.
You got the job.
Thank you so much.
Oh, big hug.
Really?
No, handshake.
But in the real world,
There may be an office romance, but if it interferes with work, then it's a problem.
a problem that's bound to be around as long as there are offices
Nice girl.
and men and women working in them. For today, Kevin Tibbles, NBC News, Chicago.
Deborah Swiss is an expert on gender issues in the workplace and the author of The Male-Minded Work, A Woman's Guide to Working with Men. Hey, Deborah, good to see you. You interviewed a bunch of male CEOs, and most told you they were scared to death to work with a woman as a superior, but then they told you after they did, they were pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. What they said is that at first they were horrified when they found out they were going to have a woman as a boss, and then what they found that they loved working for a woman. And they said things like, my boss gives me better feedback than any man I've ever worked for.
Is that a typical female characteristic, more feedback and positive feedback for missions accomplished?
Yes, yes,
And men like that because they weren't getting it from their male superiors.
absolutely.
Also, she leaves her ego at the door. A lot of men told you that.
Mm-hmm. But she doesn't have a swagger in her step that many men do. She doesn't trip over her ego on the way in the front door. And that was comforting to them.
Men also told you they found that a female boss saw things in shades of gray as opposed to black and white. What did you think they meant by that?
Right. That it's a broader lens on the world of work. That men would just say, let's just do it. Whereas women might say, let's look at a bunch of issues here. Let's look at the impact on the whole organization before we move ahead.
I know you talk to a lot of women, and they're also telling you that they are learning things from their male counterparts in terms of achieving success. One of them is, and this is telling about men, act assured even if you're not.
Right.
Why is that so important for a woman?
Right. You need to walk into a room as if you own it, because when the male executives freely admitted that they hold their female colleagues to a higher performance standard. So you're going to be watched more closely as a woman.
Except it's weird because you say that they don't walk in thinking they own the room. You said it before that women don't have that swagger, so men seem to want it both ways.
Absolutely.
Also, you said that sometimes a jerk is a jerk. Men realize this, and women are learning it.
Yes. And as a woman, my first instinct, if I have a difficult interaction with a client or a colleague, is to think, what did I do wrong? How could I handle it differently? Whereas most men said, you know what? Sometimes a jerk is just a jerk. It's not me.
Men use it as a defense mechanism. They say it couldn't be about me, so this guy must just be a jerk. What about romance? I mean, clearly, human resource departments have been set up to handle things like this. But even with all the pressure of sexual harassment lawsuits and things, are we still seeing flirtation used to get ahead in the job?
We are, and it might, and in the long run, it's going to set a career back. Bad thing to do.
So your rule, I think about 12% of companies that you surveyed have some workplace rules in place for dating on the job.
Yes.
Are we going to be seeing more and more companies come up with that as being a complete taboo?
Probably, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, you have to use common sense. The simple fact is dating and romance is complicated enough, and when you bring in issues of power and job security and authority, it just gets all the more complicated.
Bottom line is men and women have been working together for a long time. We still seem to have issues, but still have issues in marriage between men and women, so why wouldn't it take place in the workplace? Deborah Swift, thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's 50 minutes after the hour, and still ahead on Today, a Today investigation, the flood of counterfeit prescription drugs that are on the market. The fallout can be deadly, and we'll talk about that. But first, we're back after these messages.